Hey everyone, how are you? So I'm going to talk about what is going on in Texas today. But before I get started, do me a favor, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button if you're not a subscriber, and notification bell next to it so that you won't miss an episode. So Texas just had the biggest tax cut in history. Um, so if anybody's watching me, you live in Texas. So $18 billion deal reached. So $12 billion is going to go to decreasing school property tax, $100,000 in homestead exemptions to homeowners. And I'm going to use this story to go into the details of what a homestead exemption is. All right. So they also got their franchise tax. They won't have any franchise tax for small businesses. They get a tax break on appraisals if the home is worth $5 million or less. So this is the biggest tax cut in history. So again, homestead exemption, $100,000. So the seniors will be protected from being priced out of their home. No franchise tax, and don't even have to file for franchise tax for small businesses. Appraisal reform, largest property tax cut in history. They still have to vote on it. The voting is November 7th to get the final bill passed. So this is good news for people who live in Texas. They did interview a man who was actually paying like some crazy amount of taxes on his home. He was paying like 14,000 for taxes on a home in Texas. So that is what some people are experiencing over in Texas. So I'm sure that's some, not all. So I'm going to use this to talk about what a homestead exemption is, because I thought that would be interesting. So they're getting $100,000 homestead exemption, $100,000. So in other states, you get like 15,000. So they vary from state to state, but I know in other states the exemption is 15,000. So in Texas, it's 100,000. So what does that mean? So a homestead exemption is going to lower your tax obligations. So say, for example, you have $100,000. Well, first, to qualify for a homestead exemption, you have to meet the qualifications. And the qualifications for a homestead exemption, you have to have a disability or be an older adult or a veteran or a law enforcement official who is disabled or a first responder who is disabled. So those are the qualifications that you have to meet first to get a homestead exemption. I'll say, okay, so this is what the benefits of a homestead exemption are. It lowers your tax obligation. So, for example, $100,000 homestead exemption. Say you have a $200,000 house. So you take that 200,000 minus that 100,000 homestead exemption, and you're being taxed on $100,000. So instead of being taxed on $200,000, you're being taxed on $100,000. Whereas opposed to, say, if you live in a different state and you have a $15,000 exemption, like some of the states. Some states have a $15,000 exemption. So say you have a $200,000 house minus 15,000. So it is going to lower your taxes, but it's not going to lower them as much as having a $100,000 homestead exemption, if you know what I mean. So it lowers your tax obligation. Secondly, it protects you from creditors. How does it protect you from creditors? Well, it depends on the equity in your home. And if your equity is lower than the limit required by that state, you would have to see what that limit is. But they're looking at your equity. If your equity is lower than the limit, then your creditor cannot force you It cannot force the house to be sold. So it protects you from the creditor. The creditor cannot force the sale of your home. So this is for unsecured creditors only. So it's not, this is not include the bank. All right. So the first thing with the homestead exemption, number one, it lowers your tax obligation. Instead of being taxed on $200,000, you're being taxed on $100,000. It protects you from creditors. The creditors can't force you to sell the house. And then lastly, it protects you from bankruptcy. So with bankruptcy, again, they are looking at the equity in your home. And if your equity is less than a certain limit required by that state, then they cannot force the sale of your home. And that is how it protects you. So that is the value of having a homestead exemption. And again, you can qualify for that if you have a disability, if you're an older adult, if you're a veteran, if you're a law enforcement official who is disabled, or a first responder who is disabled. It lowers your tax obligation. You're not being taxed on the whole price of the house. It protects you from creditors, from forcing the sale of your house, and it protects you from bankruptcy, from forcing the sale of your house. One thing that it does not protect you from is a foreclosure. So a foreclosure, if you like stop making your payments, you get behind on your payments, it doesn't stop a foreclosure from happening. So you still have to make your payments on time and be responsible as far as that goes. So that is what is going on with Texas. Texas is getting a big tax cut, but it still depends on the vote. They still have to do a final vote. And after that vote, then they expect for it to pass. And it will be the biggest tax cut in history. So if you live in Texas, then you'll probably be able to feel that if you own a home or if you own a small business, because it's really catered towards people who own homes and people who own small businesses. So that is what is going on over in Texas. As far as other states, if you don't live in Texas, this is something that our legislatures could be working on, because I'm sure everyone would like a tax cut, right? Not just Texas. So that is the end. That's what's going on in Texas. Do me a favor, before I leave, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button and notification bell next to it so you won't miss an episode. Also leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts. Thank you for watching. Have a good night.